Now we're pleased to be joined by WFUV New York Liberty beat reporter Miles Grossman. Miles, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm right here. Thanks for having me.
How's everything, Miles? I heard you're at the Yankee game right now, Old Timers Day, very exciting stuff, but we are going to get into the WNBA. You've been following the New York Liberty very closely. Just from your perspective, following them all season, how have things shaped up for the Liberty? Have they lived up to expectations? And just a general evaluation of the team at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely been a disappointing year for New York Liberty fans. We went into this year, we saw Sabrina Ionescu coming into year 3. We thought she had an interesting rookie year, right? Battled some injuries for first couple of years, but we think this is an all-star player really going to come into their own, and she definitely has. But Liberty haven't seen the success that they thought they'd have at all, right? They're the 11th seed out of 12 teams in the league, and going into August now, we definitely didn't think that's where the Liberty would stand. There's around Sabrina, there's still a lot of talent. And, it's not necessarily over for the Liberty yet because they are the 11th seed, but everyone besides Indiana is kind of clumped together right outside that playoff picture. So they'll surely have their fate in their own hands. They play L.A. twice, Dallas twice, Atlanta twice, 3 teams right above them. So the fate is still in their hands, but it's been a disappointing year, and I would definitely say it's easy to say they have not lived up to expectations in any sort of way. We thought last year, well, we see the talent, but it makes sense it hasn't gelled yet, and even early this year when they were on a bit of a losing streak, we thought, well, you see the talent, you see the flashes, but they haven't put it together. We thought maybe by the end of the year they have, and now they're as cold as they ever have been. It looks like they're probably outside the playoff picture. So, no, they have not lived up to expectations.
Yeah, Liberty are definitely a little disappointing to say the least. They have a 10-18 record. Miles, what do you think is going wrong with the team right now? Are they just weak defensively? What's happening there?
Well, it's tough to pinpoint. I mean, there's a ton of individual talent, a lot of talented role players, but at times, as of late, they've battled Chicago a couple of times. And when you look at the Chicago roster in comparison to Liberty, right, between Candace Parker, Kalia Copper, Vandersloot, it's tough to argue that we have a comparable big three in the way that they do. And so at times you look at it and say maybe it's just a talent issue against the top 3 teams. But, outside of that, I would say it is on the defensive end. At times they look like surely one of the weakest defensive teams in the league, just effort-wise, intensity-wise, and that's what seems to be haunting them because when you really look at this roster, there's so much individual offensive talent between, the flashy play of Maureen Johannes and obviously in the post of Howard and Dolson, and it's confusing why it's not coming together in the way that you would expect it to because there's so much individual talent, and especially with a veteran head coach. But I guess if you were to pinpoint anything, it would be a certain lack of cohesiveness and intensity on the defensive end.
Yeah, you have all this offensive talent, and it's just the inability to really put it together and those defensive breakdowns. Very frustrating if you're a Liberty fan. And Miles, as we look towards the playoffs, a lot of our listeners may not be familiar with the way the WNBA playoff format is, right? There's 12 teams in the league. Could you sort of break it down in terms of how many teams make it? Did the Liberty have a shot despite being on the outside looking in?
Yeah, so there's only 12 teams in the league, and only one of them is mathematically eliminated as of now, the Indiana Fever, and Liberty's right above them in that 11 hole right now. So it's surely, it'd be a slim chance that the Liberty make it at this point, given the talent of the teams right above them. But 8 out of the 12 do make it, right? So the vast majority do, and it's not over being the 11 trying to make the top 8. It'll require some teams to drop a couple, but they have 2 games coming up, both at home, a 2-game set against the Sparks. And the Sparks are right above them, and you got to think that they'll have to take the 2 of those. And the same thing, they go to Dallas and play a 2-game set. Dallas is right above them. If they take 2, they're still alive. And they wrap up the year with a home and away with Atlanta, which will be pivotal. It's already been a tense series. Atlanta has dominated the series in a way, but the Liberty have competed in those games. So they'll have to make the top 8 out of the 12. They stand in the 11 hole right now, but it's not over because it's really funny how the schedule is shaken out. Right, the last month they've played teams at the top a little bit, such as the Mystics, the Sky here and there, and then of course the 2-game set against Las Vegas right after the All-Star break. But now they have teams kind of lower down with them, and it's an opportunity for them to capitalize. But I'm not necessarily sure I can say I'm confident they'll do so, just given how they've been playing. It's been a definition of an inconsistent ball club.
No, for sure. What are some things that you think that the Liberty can do, like for next season? Like, what are some moves that they can make in the offseason to try and like improve their chances at making the playoff and doing just a little bit better?
Well, it's difficult to say because at this point in the WNBA, it takes a big three, such as you look at the teams top the league, especially like Las Vegas, right? They got 4 All-Stars in their starting lineup. It's you have your Kelsey Plum, your Asia Wilsons, your Hanbys, and it's not like there's many of those players in the world. The Liberty can't really just get their hands on a world-class talent like that, and that's almost what it seems it's going to take for the Liberty to compete, like one more world-class talent. And I don't really see anyone in the W willing to let go of those pieces, so it's going to be having to develop it at home. Obviously, Natasha Howard is an extremely talented player, former defensive player of the year. She's done almost everything she can do this year. She's aging a bit, but it's about finding that big 3 or 4. Almost, they all have to be world class, and that Sabrina is surely that world class point guard for you. Natasha Howard is slightly aging. Steph Dolson, and then outside of that, obviously the talented Han Chu and Marine Johannes, very talented players, but at this stage of their young careers, they're talented role players. And it's going to take maybe Marine and Han Chu developing to those all-star caliber players in the next couple of years. But if that doesn't happen, I might see you might have to say that the Liberty are going to be outside of the playoff picture for a number of years, because it's not going to be like they can acquire some spectacular outside talent from within the W. I don't see that happening, and that's the immediate solution. That doesn't seem realistic. So it might be a couple years for the Liberty to genuinely turn things around if their young talent doesn't develop immediately.
Miles, we do appreciate the time. We got one more question for you. I guess looking down the line, just could you give us a sense of the timeline for our listeners of the season? How many more games do they have to play, and when do the playoffs? When is that scheduled?
Yeah, so the season wraps up in mid-August. Their final game is August 14th at home against the Atlanta Dream. By then, it'll probably be decided, to be honest. I don't see it coming down to that one unless they play particularly well in the next couple of weeks. But the season wraps up in mid-August, and then there's obviously 1 or 2 days off before they would play in that 8 seed if they were to make it in. And it's a 1-game play-in for those 8 seeds. So it's a tough opportunity even if they do make it in. But it would be in that mid-August 1-game play-in would be the hope for Liberty fans, but that doesn't seem all that likely at this point.
Well, it's not over yet for the Liberty. Miles, thanks for joining us, guys. Please be sure to tune into all of Miles' post-game reports on YouTube on the WFUV Sports page. Thanks, Miles.